Okay, I want to start this video off with retouching images using the clone stamp tool. This is a tool that everybody's been using for decades. It's been around since, well, very, very long time, and this is the tool that people would start using. Okay, so it's brush-based, and what that means is you can actually paint strokes using your mouse, pen tool, whatever it is that you're using. Now, the other thing about being brush-based is we can change the hardness or softness of the brush. And depending on the area that you're working on, you'll want to modify the edges of your brush. If you're working in a very nondescript area, then you can get away with a softer edged brush where the transitional edges and all this kind of stuff kind of blend in a nice soft way. But if you're working on an area that has a defined pattern, such as the ribbing in the collar here, then you will probably want to use a harder edge brush, because if you use a soft edge brush to sample, then you're going to paint in the softness of that soft edge brush, and your image is going to look soft. Does that make sense? I hope it does. All right, so I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and I'm going to use the clone stamp tool, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this white spot in here. All right, I mean, I could use a variety of tools. I just need to show you how these guys work. So what you'd have to do is, using the clone stamp tool, you have to sample an area, telling Photoshop, these are the pixels I want to grab, and then we're going to paint them in another place. All right, so let's just zoom this up a little bit more like that. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit more. That might be too much, but let's go out just a fraction. All right, so now what I want to do is get rid of this guy here. I'm going to create a second or a new layer, and it's going to be a blank layer. I'm just going to call it clone. Clone stamp, just so I know that that's what I'm working on with this. Now, with the clone stamp tool, you have some blend modes. I'm going to leave it in normal. The opacity is 100%, but you can understand that you might want to paint in or clone in at a reduced opacity if you're kind of trying to fix up something that would require that. The flow deals with how much and how fast the paint is coming out of your brush and all that kind of stuff. Then you have something called airbrush, and the aligned sample. I can show you that. That's really an interesting thing to need to know. And now then you have these guys here, which is, if I was on the background layer and not doing this other thing of whatever, then I would use the current layer and sample from the current layer. But since I like to clone and paint onto a separate layer, then this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to clone through this, or sample through, and then paint on that other layer. All right, so I need to Option click or Alt click if you're on a PC to sample the pixels that we want to clean up. All right, so since I'm going to be coming in here and cleaning up some of the pixels from this area, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to sample some of the dark gray in there and come in and clean up some of these areas here, so I have a bigger, broader area to work with. All right, hope that makes sense. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. Holding down the space bar temporarily changes any tool into the hand tool, which allows me to grab and move my image around. All right, so I'm going to reduce the size of my brush just because it's too big for the area I'm working on in here. To reduce my brush, I'm going to click on the left bracket key. And if I want to increase my brush, I tap on the right bracket key. These bracket keys are located to the right of the letter P on your keyboard. All right, so I'm going to Option click here and come over and just paint over that little white thing there. And then I'm going to Option click there, and I'm going to come in and paint over that little area there. And then I'm going to come over here and just do a little bit of that. And now I'm getting ready to kind of clean up this area here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to come over here and sample on that, and then sample on this, and then sample on that, and sample on that. And then I think I'm going to come over here and kind of sample a little bit this way and sample a little bit that way to clean up that stuff. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the size of my brush slightly, and I'm going to Option click here, and I'm going to just sample along. You see the crosshair? See the crosshair? And as I move my brush down, it's kind of following. That's because it is aligned. I'll show you what the unaligned is in a minute. And then I'm going to come over here on this side and sample over here and bring that in. And then I'm going to come over here and sample around, and come over here and sample around, and then come over here and sample around. All right, so I'm sampling in multiple areas to kind of clean up this thing. Now, I didn't really have to. I guess I could have just gone in and gone with one big, clone stamp tool or whatever it is, but I'd rather go and do it that way. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another new layer, and I'm going to call this one Healing Brush. And I'm going to demonstrate the Healing Brush tool to you. All right. Now, that tool is located up here. Normally it would be a Band-Aid that you would see, and we have the spot healing and we have the healing. I'm going to talk about the Healing Brush first because that was one of the first healing blending tools that came into the retouch arena here. So it's going to blend, whereas the clone stamp tool would pick up the color, the tone, and the texture, and paint or place down the color, the tone, and the texture, and pick up this and move it over there. And I'm sure you've seen some bad retouching where you've noticed that there was some repeating patterns going on. It's because of the clone stamp tool not being used properly. All right. So using the Healing Brush allows you to sample in the same fashion as the clone stamp tool, but all right, it'll do some blending. All right. So let me just come over here and sample this, and then come over here and paint on there, and it's gone. Come over here and paint and just kind of come in and do that. Now I'm doing this because I want you to see that when I paint down it goes dark, but when I release the mouse it lightens up. So I'm going to sample this darker stuff over here, and I'm going to paint. And I'm sure you saw it go darker when I release. You see it go lighter, and it blends. Beauty. That's the beauty of this tool. Absolutely fantastic. All right. Next tool I want to talk about is the spot healing. All right, so I'm just going to come over here and create yet another layer over here. I'm just going to call this guy, you got it. All right, and I have to make sure that Sample All Layers is selected with this. And this is going to do a healing process similar to what the Healing Brush did, or a blending process, I should say, but you don't have to sample anywhere. All right, so it's kind of easier because you don't have to sample, but it's not necessarily easier because you got to be careful where you're, using this tool. All right, so if I was to click over here and just kind of paint a little dab in there, what it's going to do is it's going to take from the surrounding areas of my brush sample and fill it in. All right, so that's okay when you're doing stuff like this, but if you get too close to an edge here, then it's going to blend where the contrast is, and it's not going to necessarily look very good. All right, but the beauty of this is you can just come in and start tapping, doing this stuff, and you can see why this was such a hit. Any of these blending tools were such a hit when they first came in. All right, because they just took what used to take us forever and ever and ever to edit and repair images down to a matter of minutes. Okay, so that is the Healing Brush and the Spot Healing Brush. The next one I want to show you is one of my favorites. It's the Patch tool. It's not a brush-based thing. It's a selection-based thing. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down to the main image here, and I'm going to use it here to show you. All right, so if I wanted to get rid of this using any of the other tools, I might get some blurring along that area there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a selection around here, including the background and the edge of the collar here, and I'm going to put my cursor inside. I have it set to source. So this is my source. I'm going to put my cursor inside, and I'm going to move the marching ants, and I'm going to say put these pixels in there, and I'm going to release that and then come over here, and it is done. Absolutely beautiful. I can come over here and do the same thing and just move it up this way a little bit, do something like that, let go, and cleaned up perfect. This is absolutely awesome. All right, this is just wow, absolutely amazing. Just come in, line it up, let go, move on to the next thing. I could also just come over here and do this, and then move over to there, do that, blend, and it's done. I can come over here and grab this area and move it over and blended, done. Over there, blended, done. All right, so there's just so much you can do with this. Absolutely amazing. I want to just come over here and see if there's anything else I can actually work on. In the documentation, I do something on that. In the video, I did something on the other piece. Let's not keep everything identical throughout the whole area there. And let's get rid of these little paint chips on the end of my nose. All right, I'm not too vain, am I? No, we're just using pictures of me throughout this whole scenario here. Let's just do this, move that over, got that, missed that piece at the beginning, put that in, done. All right, so we can carry on and go through the rest of this image, cleaning up all this other nonsense and crap just by using these tools here. Absolutely fantastic. All right, now I am going to get rid of this image, not save it, and I'm going to bring up another image that I want to work on. All right, so this image here is probably one of these guys from in here somewhere. I don't know exactly where this is coming from, but anyways, never mind all of this. All right, we'll just get out of there, and I want you to concentrate on what you're seeing in here. All I want to do now is I want to demonstrate the red eye tool, all right, or the red eye removal tool. So red eye removal tool is going to get rid of the red eye in my image. We all know that this is coming from the flash being too close to the lens and, you know, reflecting off the retina and all that kind of stuff. All right, well, this image here is of me. It was taken by a former evening student, and there was no red eye in there, so I had to actually go and put the red eye in because, you know, I just don't have red eye in my images, right? I'm just an amazing photographer where I've learned not to have all those things. But anyways, regardless, here we go. We can change the pupil size, and we can change the darken amount. All right, and all I'm going to do is come in here and click on that, and you can see I got rid of my red eye just like this. Click on that, got rid of the red eye. It's done, gone, finished. It's that simple. The darken amount just means that how much gray do you want and how dark do you want it to be. Pupil size is the diameter. So if you've got a bigger thing and then smaller, I think you guys get the idea. All right, so I'm going to close this image off and not save that. And I want to show you something else that's kind of neat. All right, so this is a new tool, and I think I'm going to just zoom in a little bit on this and come over here and show you this. This is absolutely amazing. I'm not sure this is actually the best image to demonstrate this, but it was the only thing I can come up with at this point in time. All right, and of course after I finish the video I'll find 10 other images that would work probably better, but you know, sometimes it's just better to work with what you have than to come up with something that's totally been planned and faked and all that kind of stuff. All right, so here we go. What I'm going to do, this is called the Content Aware Move tool. This is absolutely freakish. All right, so we have different ways of working with selections because again it's a selection based tool. The mode we have is to either move or extend. So I'm going to choose to move something. All right, so adaptation is how do you want the blend to go with this. You can go very strict if you have well-defined lines and areas and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to choose loose. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to reposition the roots of this plant, and I'm just going to move them over here. All right, so I'm going to come in here and I'm going to make a selection around the object that I want to move. I'm going to leave some space around to give Photoshop the wiggle room it needs to do the blending. I've chosen loose. In other words, I'm giving it a lot of freedom to blend the edges of this with that. But not only is this going to allow me to move this stuff over to here, Photoshop's going to fill in that area just as if it was never there. So I'm just going to move this here, release the mouse, wait for the spinning thing to come, and there you go. Look at that. Absolutely stunning. Now, some of the stuff I lost up here, I'm okay with that. I just needed to show you that that's how this tool works. I think that's absolutely phenomenal. All right, so that is one example of using this tool. Another example of using this tool is I'm going to move this gentleman from here over to there. All right, so what I'm going to do again, I'm going to leave it on the move, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a selection around him, and I'm going to position him over here. All right, oh, just because. So here we go. I'm going to make a loose selection around here, and I'm not going to forget to take his shadow area as well, and then come up here and take this. And this is just really amazing. I'm just going to take this guy and I'm going to position him over here and say, this is where I want this gentleman to stay, and he's going to be right there. You can see that I've well, because it's so dark in there, maybe I should have moved him over a little bit further, but still, I think you guys get the idea. I've been able to move him over there because his I believe he had a dark hat on, it blended in with that stuff over there. Notice how we're able to get rid of and fill in and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just going to undo that just for a second, and I'm going to see if I can move him possibly down here so it doesn't blend his hat so much. Let's see if that's going to help. There you go. Much, much better. All right. So there we go. Blending his hat didn't happen like it did the last time. Filled in the areas, brought in the shadow that was cast on there, and filled in this area quite nicely. All right. So now the other part of this tool is something called extend. And that will allow you to extend something. In other words, make it longer. All right, now I'm going to leave that up to your imagination as to what it is that you might want to do. I'm going to see, why don't I come over here and just try this out. And I'm going to say, stay with this. I want it to be a little bit medium. Let's try. And I'm just going to make these poles a little bit longer. I don't know if it's going to work. I know it'll work if I do this. And just come over here and make that a little bit longer. And then move over. And I'm going to go in small increments so I can actually get it to go there. All right, so there we go. That's that. I'm going to show you another example of extend, and that's with an image from a trip that I took a year or two ago in Montreal, and I'll get that image in half a second. Okay, so here I want to demonstrate the content aware move tool. All right, and I'm going to use the extend option here, and the adaptation I'm going to use is going to be strict. All right, so what I want to do is I want to extend this out over to here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make an outline along here. I'm going to come down into this and into here and around and back like that. All right, so now that I've got that brought in this way, I'm going to bring this in over to about here. And I'm going to let go of the mouse. And then I'm going to deselect. And as we can see, it did a very nice job of extending this thing out there. All we have to do is fix up that line down there and that line down there. That can be easily done using the clone stamp tool at about 50%. All right, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to option click here, and I'm just going to come over and paint down, and I'm going to just option click again and kind of paint down, and then I'm going to got that, and I would do the same thing under there, and it's all done. Absolutely stunning, absolutely fantastic. What a great way to end off the video on the retouching tools.